And this is where I'm at, by the way. Loaves and Fishes, where the entity would have, you already know that the pattern of conduct is underway, and the entity is exposing that the entities include the community churches, where there's not going to be any exception to the application of federal law, in other words. But this is the Friday. Today is, like I was just looking at, and the entity flies over my head under the fake sun. So this is indeed the P.O.C, and this is also speaking to the entity that is targeting while they are, like I already documented, hitting me. As I documented, the people that stayed engaged in that, they're doing so as the entity, that's the military, flying over me. And the entity, I want to be clear, they're going to prison. I documented them, I showed those old biddies are going to prison. So I just want to be clear, it is currently, yeah, it's the 5th. And the entity is engaging in psychopathic pacing. This is the entity that was stalking at the Upland Public Library as well, follows me to Ontario, and is very, very much mentally ill, okay? The mental illness is shared by those who are not arriving, and the entity is aware that the U.S. military is going to engage in psychopathic pacing. The entity is in relevant position. They're just inconspicuously present. I'm gonna get these license plates. But the entity is engaging in this pattern of conduct, number one, with knowledge that I'm coming here. Number two, it's speaking to what they're doing when I am here, just like what I documented when they're engaging in battery. And this is the entity that is also exemplifying severe mental instability, the psychopathic pacing, and they're doing so at a venue where their criminal activity and their presence and the maintenance of this venue is speaking to the pattern of conduct. These are the mentally ill psychopaths that expose each other while they are focused on gang stalking me. This is relevant to what Rock of Faith is engaging in yesterday. You already know that. While the entity is making false allegations, while they're gang stalking, Eddie is going to prison, and so is the gang stalker that's working at that fake church. Another one, monitoring. And this is the entity that, on whose behalf they're making malicious assertions, while they are engaging in the pattern of conduct of harassment as hostile psychopaths who stalk me in helicopters and then engage in what is harassment through the people of the state that are the demons pacing all around me as well under the fake sun. So I just want to be clear, the only thing that the entity is accomplishing is the fact that this fake church is engaged in gang stalking when they are serving foods and they're at the venue. This is not separate from what they're doing, and they're not serving food today. This is supposed to be some sort of, they're not serving food and you're hungry, so I'm going to stalk you in helicopter. These demons are going to prison. All right, this is the P.O.C. The old ladies that are on video hitting me and the third-party gang stalker with the dog in the stroller that's engaged in a battery, as I documented, this is the entity, they're going to prison. All three of them are going to federal prison, and this is the entity that they're engaging in battery on behalf of, and this is the entity that are not the real Church of Christ Jesus. The entity is engaging in battery vicariously, engaging in waging false assertions vicariously, and they're doing so in that specific environment. I just want to be clear on that. This is the P.O.C. This is also relevant to where I came from today. Upland Public Library, that's Elizabeth and Ashley, Adam Tuckerman, Kiki, Ellen, that are engaging in the pattern of conduct, and they're doing so. They're going to federal prison as well, systematically monitoring. And the entities engaging when they are in the service of food, just like you see this is why they're going to prison. Because this is the entity that poisons on behalf of that entity that just exposed the fact that this is a gang stalking church, which is a threat to the public. All right, this is the entity that engages in this, and this is what they were all engaging in. They want, this is how pathetic the demon possessed are. Oh, she's gonna walk to the church and no one's gonna be there, and so we're gonna stalk her by helicopter so that everyone knows, including the feds know, which I represent, I'm speaking as the authority, that they're engaged in criminal monitoring. In fact, which you already know, but the entity engaging in this confirms that, and everybody is going to federal prison pursuant to that. These are demons that are also homeless, and they're going to prison. So I guess that might be better than sleeping outside, but the entity is going to federal prison. These are the rules, and you're looking at the entity that's mentally ill, that makes very poor choices while they are focused on me. I do not care, okay? This is the entity that's more obsessed with my vagina and engage in self-harm. You're going to prison while I'm at the fake church and the entity stalking me by helicopter, in case you haven't gathered that. You're going to prison while I document you, while you are in relevant position. And this is relevant to every single time you are at this venue and anyone at this venue and the purpose of this venue, which is surveillance, not worshiping the Lord God. This is P.O.C. This is the entity that's engaged in that pattern of conduct, and they're doing so pursuant to surveillance, which the entire neighborhood shares in. And I've already been down this street. I've already documented their houses and their license plates, and they're sharing in that criminal P.O.C. This is license plate 9TR374. This is severe mental instability that the entity is exposing about itself. including the people of the state that are hiding in relevant position. You already know that the entity is always, and these license plates represent that presence as well, and that presence is criminal. But the entity is exposing how mentally unstable that they are while they engage in that pattern of conduct. That's a demon that's surrounding. That's doing half of the entity that is psychopathic, and the fake sun is moving with me. This is how you know that they are stalking and they're engaging in that purpose of surrounding. That's license 9 Mary George Paul 514 P.O.C. These are the mentally ill. And these are the demons. This is the entity, the demon possessed, that intended to commit murder. Understand why they're gang stalking. And they're still doing so in furtherance of murder. This was the purpose of stalking me. This is the purpose of maintaining comprehensive surveillance in malicious ways, such as with a fake church that's engaged in surveillance with the people of the state, all of whom are demons that have been relegated to harassing and making malicious assertions, which is also federal offenses while the entity is doing so in furtherance of murder. Never mind the fact that they're not going to accomplish it. The U.S. military, the people of the state, people like Tracy Banks and Jason Fields are going to prison because this is terrorism under all circumstances. P.O.C. All right, this is the entity that's engaged in that, and the people of the state are going to prison. The government has already handled. The purpose of this investigation is to let you know that surveillance is underway throughout the United States. It is 5:53 p.m. There was no sun in Florida today at all. Okay, the entity's keeping it here 3 hours ahead. It's already dark in Florida, and it remained over me as I documented, including over the Upland Public Library in the same position that it was in the morning when I arrived at or around 10 a.m. This is the pattern of conduct, and this is the entity that is subject to federal prison, and there is no bar with regard to how many defendants. I mean, everybody at Alvarado Gardens is going to federal prison that I documented. The entity at Economy Inn, that hotel, committed kidnapping, they're going to federal prison. The entity that's gang stalking at 7-Eleven committing poison, all those employees are going to federal prison. All the employees of the Fontana Lewis Library, I'm documenting, Stephanie Ortiz, she's going to federal prison. The kidnappers of the Fontana Police, the entity that's gang stalking the kidnappers of the Ontario Police Department, that entire department is being disbanded, and they're all going to federal prison as I've documented them kidnapping and engaging in stalking. The demons of the Upland Police Department kidnapping and engaging in stalking, they're going to federal prison. The entity that's engaging in what is the pattern of conduct at Woodside Senior Apartments, units 33 through 64, they're all going to federal prison. I'm speaking to those that are going to do time in prison. The entity is being prosecuted as domestic terrorists. That's everybody. And there is a large portion that is also going to prison, and there is no such thing as too many suffering what are the penalties for terrorism. And you have the entity that's engaging in physical violence. Those two old ladies that are on video, they're going to federal prison. All right, and so is the third party. He's always gang stalking me throughout the city of Ontario, and he is going to federal prison. The entity that is violating you and doing so, and this is the entity that provides evidence that they are in fact gang stalking while I go to the venue, and this is what an entity is doing. This is not witchcraft. This is supposed to be something that, oh, you're gonna cry now because they're not serving food today, and as you cry, I'm gonna fly in circles over your head. This is the entity that's engaging in psychological torture. Okay, the psychological torture is the evidence used to diagnose mental instability, and that's exactly what you witnessed while the entity flew in circles over me, incriminating the people of the state. All right, this is P.O.C. This is I Street, I as in Indiana, and Euclid Avenue, where I've documented the entity gang stalking me by the Ontario International Airport when I'm walking to Upland, California early in the morning. That's the evidence that's already on the record. And this is, again, another venue. They're crossing paths. They're all stalking. The entity is engaging in that while they are the people of the state that are going to be subject to martial law. And that's because they are a mentally ill population. Okay, I do want to be clear. The entity is engaging in what are changing their dates, making the meals unavailable. I'm speaking to those that work at the venue, and that is rapidly changing, and that's because I'm documenting. So the entity that's engaging in that, they're talking about the 5th Thursday, the 5th Friday. It is the 1st Friday of June, and the entity is engaging in that which is not published, and it's also contradicting what they are telling me. And remember, these are gang stalkers telling me this, and this is the entity that plans to engage in this documented act of terrorism. Every volunteer, they're also doing so with the students that are engaged in the pattern of conduct, and I want to be clear, they're subject to prison in the first place because they're serving food, and you're looking at the policy as to why that is the case. Literally, this video evidence is as to why. This is the entity doing so under the guise of being Stater Brothers, a grocery store? No, they're engaged in surveillance, and that's why they're going to federal prison. All of those employees. There is a long list of those that are going to be inmates, and this is exactly why. There is no such thing, and under federal law where the government's engaged in surveillance with an entire population, you are absolutely getting justice, even where hundreds of people are going to federal prison, and that's justice. They will be scattered in this country. There will be facilities built and constructed for it. They will be involuntarily committed based on what it is that I'm documenting right now. And you are documented and you are going to prison while I capture any means of presence, and that includes the license plates. This is the pattern of conduct. It is currently 5:57 p.m. This is relevant to the entity gang stalking at Rock of Faith yesterday. That ongoing false allegations, like I'm going to steal, period, let alone from homeless people that are monitoring my vagina. And this is where the entity is referring to the Ontario police. That's a threat. While they are psychotic, gang stalking with that entity that is fully surrounded with evidence already, including Eddie that is gang stalking me with the San Bernardino Police Department and the Ontario Police Department. He's going to prison and he's engaging in what is an assault. And they plan that together to engage in what is harassing me and expelling me and making me feel unwelcome. And this is how they treat the homeless. These are not Christians. Moreover, these are defendants and they're going to prison. This is POC. I will continuously document these fake churches, and I'm going to document them because it's criminal activity while they're engaging in surveillance, not merely being ungodly and demonic, but they are engaging in criminal activity, and I'm going to continue to document them while they seek to expel me from these venues, while they're supposed to be providing food to the homeless, and they also receive money and assistance under that malicious and false pretense. This is POC. It is currently 5:58 p.m. This is the Methodist Church at I Street in Euclid, where this morning I was present. You're going to look at the pictures. I was present this morning walking on Euclid, and this same population was stalking me with the City of Ontario that was maintaining light activity right here. Okay, so the entity is maintaining plane activity, and this is a stalker in close proximity with a communication device. The entity is amplifying plane activity while after they engaged in what is getting their rocks off by flying in circles over the top of the prosecutor's head. The prosecutor that's having them committed. That's the very information that's going to be produced. It's not remaining a mystery. They're going to produce their identity, and they're going to. And those that are part of these fake churches, this is the Methodist Church. This is where I was this morning at I Street in Euclid, and they are going to prison. This is POC. It is currently, while I am at the facilitating venue of where license 8G and 118. They are absolutely stalking. That's why the entity pulls out a helicopter. They're not just engaging in that while I'm by myself and nobody's around. Clearly, that's not the case. But they are monitoring in their homes while they share in that ongoing open engagement and terrorizing someone together. And these are demons that derive pleasure out of that. This is necessary commitments for psychopaths that engage in what is a system designed to murder and kidnap people. License 8GSL118, 9KTT779. License plate 6KGZ729. Alrighty, this is where also you're mindful of, this is where the entity is gang stalking by Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime is delivering packages in this neighborhood, gang stalking me, sharing in the same psychopathic pattern of conduct, and doing so while using packages and a logo to do so. This is the entity that's engaging in what is stalking by the Ontario International Airport, which is the U.S. military, stalking me in those planes and those commercial planes and in the helicopter, like you just saw them exemplify. Okay, this is a demon that is gang stalking. Okay, that's the POC. And these are the demons that are engaging in that while I continuously publish evidence, which is triggering the murderers who are being prosecuted and who are going to be subject to martial law. Okay, that's the pattern of conduct. These are the people of the state that are sharing in this, and I'm documenting them. This entire neighborhood, and it's the whole city. By the way, it is the Ontario Police Department as well. They're being disbanded. The ones that the gang stalkers refer to are the ones that are being disbanded and prosecuted, and Mike LORENZ is going to prison while I have a body of evidence of him and the military stalking me by helicopter for years, and he's going to be subject to mental examinations, and he is not the only one. This is POC. Alrighty, this is I Street and Euclid. So this is why you're also going to prison, because while these gang stalking churches are engaged in the service of food with the that's what that is right there, City of Ontario, Vehicle 4241. These gang stalking churches are going to be subject to federal prison. All right, that's the POC. And the entity is engaging in this because they are seeking to deter me from going to the venues. It's not. I'm going to go document what are gang stalkers, and they are going to federal prison for serving food and threatening my life by stalking with the U.S. military. All right, that's the pattern of conduct. It's currently 6:01 p.m.